Like, this is all through the book, you see that, you know, where these people just randomly quote off literature. So, but here's the thing that I found really interesting, and I'm going to try not to get overly political, because I don't know if I'm allowed to be political, but this has something that I think is really relevant today, and I just want everybody to think about it because it's important. Um, Diana comes from a bit of scandal, and I think it's especially relevant in this current climate, and it also sheds some insight into the underlying themes of Outlander. And I'm going to say this in her own words, and so you know, I hope you hear what I hear in it. She's third generation. She says, "I'm third generation native of Flagstaff, and there aren't a lot of us, only because Flagstaff isn't that old. Among the early founders of the town were my great-grandparents, Stanley Sykes, born in Yorkshire, England, but at the age of 15 was diagnosed with consumption. The only chance his doctor told him was to leave England, go to Arizona where the warm, dry air was good for the lungs. Stanley heeded this advice and with his elder brother Godfrey set sail for the New World and the healing balm of the desert air. Like many other Outlander, my husband for example, who thought Arizona was just a desert, Stanley was startled to find that the northern third of the state sits atop the Colorado Plateau, and that the San Francisco peaks are covered with the largest forest of ponderosa pine in the world. In search of desert, Godfrey went south, but Stanley stayed, seduced by the rush of wind through the pines and the clear dark skies of mountain nights, thick with stars. His son Harold, my grandfather, became the mayor of Flagstaff, and thereby hangs our family tale. It was a scandal. In fact, or so everyone said, when my mother Jacqueline Sykes, the mayor's daughter, descendant of one of the first families of Flagstaff, fell in love with Antonio Gabaldon. Tony was smart, handsome, athletic, hardworking, and a Mexican American. Born in Belen, New Mexico, and in 1949 in a small Arizona town, this was interracial marriage, or so everyone said. My mother's friend said so. Mrs. X, her English teacher, said so and told her firmly that she couldn't possibly marry a Mexican because her children would be idiots. The parish priest who refused to marry them said so. Such a marriage would never last. The interested parties who took out a public petition against the match said so. So it was a scandal. My mother's parents said so as well, and at last my mother was persuaded and reluctantly broke the engagement. My mother's parents sent her south to the University of Arizona in Tucson to leave the scandal behind and to forget. But she didn't forget. And 6 months later, on a dark December night, she called Tony and said, "I still want you. If you still want me, come and get me." He drove down from the snow-covered mountains to the desert and brought her back the same night. They were married at 6:30 the next morning by a priest from another parish. It was a long and happy marriage, dissolved only by death, and 13 months after the wedding, I arrived, third generation born on the mountain. We in the fourth generation live in Scottsdale now, but I still keep the family house in Flagstaff and escape there regularly to write. To me, the ideal weather for writing involves the gleaming portcullis of icicles to keep out all intruders, soft white drifts on the pines, and the sidewalk's muffled grind of cars in the distance, crushing cinders into the slippery packed snow as they labor uphill. Oh, and Mrs. X, you were wrong. Now I thought that was such a story. I'm going to cry. I hope I don't cry. That was such a story, and it really hits me in the core because when I think about it, her parents stayed and lived in Flagstaff, a city that started a petition against them, okay, against their marriage, and her father ended up the Arizona state senator living there. And Diana herself came into the world under a cloud of scorn and scandal and community derision. Her mother got pregnant a mere 4 months after this stunning turn in the community, and the mayor's daughter coming back married to the forbidden Mexican man. In an atmosphere where community leaders had taken petitions against her parents' marriage and derided her father's heritage, shunned by the parish, Diana was already labeled an idiot before she was ever conceived. Which, like, can you imagine that? You know, like when you think about Diana and how unbelievably brilliant she is, it's like, and it's very heartbreaking to me in light of the current climate in this country. 68 years later, I mean, that's almost a lifespan, and yet we still see this kind of animosity over race and heritage. And like I said, I don't want to get political, but take a moment to think about it. Diana's mother took a very courageous step to stand against racism and hate in her community and follow her heart. Had she not, the world would not have Diana Gabaldon, never have had these life-changing books, or this fantastic show, or this profound impact it has had on the world. And for me personally, Diana and her work has touched many aspects in my own life. I've learned so much about so many different areas from the books. I have many of my closest friendships, some of them are here, through these books and through this show. Scotland itself has had a boom in economy, has had a boom in tourism. I mean, it's affected countries, these books, you know. When you think about it, these people, like, you know, it was ignorant and it was backward, and it's got to change. So I just wanted to put that thought out to you because I see it happening even now, and we're almost 70 years later, and it really, that was not when America was great, in my opinion. So I'll just move on. I'm not going to get into any more than that, but I just had to say it. Anyway, her parents, here's how I see it related to the books, this story. Her parents showed courage. They were two people from different worlds, and their love went against the odds. They had a sense of loyalty and honor and a struggle for acceptance, and they faced obstacles and overcame labels and prejudice. In her male characters, Jamie in particular, there's an influence of her husband, surely. However, I also see shades of her father. He's a man of justice, of honor, courage. He was labeled and judged based on his nationality, which, you know, Jamie, you know, is called a barbarian and all these other things because of who he was. He was a Highlander. He's athletic, amiable, and has an ability to find common ground with the powerful as well as with the downtrodden. And he's a born leader. We see someone who rises above those who tried to crush him. And so to me, that sounds a lot like Jamie. And their story sounds a lot like Brian and Ellen. For those of you that might not, that's Jamie's parents. And they kind of eloped and they did this whole type of thing. And I kind of have to feel like a little bit of that's her parents. Do you not see that? So, you know, it's kind of interesting.